My name is Simon Hall. I'm the Be Active Director for Black Country Consortium. When county sports partnerships were established, we were very keen to begin to look at how we fitted into the landscape of socio-economic and health developments in the area of Black Country. Just before you decide to go to Villa Park or the wonderful St Andrews, it's not working well. You hit the Black Country, Wolverhampton, Walsall, Dudley and Sandwell. Our work over there has begun to look at how we position our sport and physical activity. And the new government strategy gives us such a great opportunity of how we're going to work things forward. The Black Country Be Active Partnership is accountable to Sport England through the Black Country Consortium. Our board reports to our local enterprise partnership board, which is also a quite exciting opportunity. So when the government strategy comes along, we can begin to really see how we position levels of sports participation, more people taking part with that socio-economic development of the area. And one of the old Sport England statistics say, for every 1% decrease in GVA in the area, you see a 0.3% drop in participation. Using Sport England active people data, as about half the population in the Black Country currently inactive, 512,000. That gives us a tremendous opportunity and challenge. What I wanted to show you today was our Watch Your Motivation film. And Watch Your Motivation film is a part of our findings from our Sport England Get Healthy, Get Into Sport programme. A programme that's really targets some of the most deprived areas in the country, let alone Black Country, and how do we really focus on community capacity building, and what does that tell us about that community, around that sector, and what works in trying to get more people taking part. As community capacity builders, we've also looked at ways in which we invest in organisations like the Walsall Community Trust, who are directly involved in that delivery. I think we'll just scrap it and just move on to the slides, please. So we begin to look at images around why people are motivated to volunteer or take part, and why they do want to do things in their community. It's been a real challenging programme, and not least a challenging programme because we're hitting the most deprived areas. It's that people feel like a done-to generation. They've been compounded by range of initiatives, interventions, experiences, others. And we haven't been successful in our numbers, but we've learned a lot about how we engage with those communities. Building confidence, trust and faith in that community and the work we do has been fundamental for taking our work forward. I'm quite perplexed by that, the line at the bottom. We've tested out 5 times. It is grammatically correct, but it doesn't look it. But everybody's reason for volunteering, let alone taking part in sport, are different. We begin to look at some real clear data of what it's telling us about that locality. This is an area in Dudley. What does it tell us about why people participate? What's been their motivations? What impact and influence those capacity builders, those volunteer leaders have on our area? Who are the key deliverers? What do they do? What can they offer? How can they begin to change the system and organisations? What are things that work in terms of those demographics to get people taking part? We supplemented this work with a whole compendium of evidence base of why you should invest in physical activity, or exercise, or sport, or physical activity, or physical recreation. And what we're really finding also is the sports sector is so poorly defined. And I really appreciate Judy's comments, is we need to get that definition right. It's not only ill-defined, it's really undervalued. And actually people's motivation to take part in sport or as capacity building in their locality, or the role organisations play to try and inform change in those areas, don't really see the value of sport. And that's a key thing if we are going to change the landscape within our employment and skills. So we're hitting these areas, and you must see these in your own localities. We're hitting areas with long-term health-term problems. So most of our Black Country motion work is around that Bilston, Willenhall area and Bloxwich that you see there, the darker reds. And it begins to really tell us a picture about those neighbourhoods, those communities. We're now doing some really exciting work with Jeff around a particular state in Heath County, Wolverhampton, which I'll refer to a little later. If we are going to drive employment skills, we're also hitting the qualifications and skills arguments. And that's a key bit in terms of the future work of our CSP. So we've got a qualifications challenge. In fact, Black Country's got most challenges. Although I really found a really interesting stat the other day. Cost of car to house ratio, Black Country has the highest in the country. So people not worried about their live, but they want their car to look absolutely top drawer. And besides that indicator, we're doing very well on many things. So if you look at the issues around GVA, there's about a £10 billion output gap in the Black Country compared to national average. There's a £500,000 participation gap between Black Country and national average. It tells its story. So as a CSP, we begin to look at what we're trying to do moving forward in response to the strategy. How do we get that balancing act between direct delivery, things like Black Country Motion, Sport Debate, satellite clubs, etc., with that key work that's needed around planning and coordination. And key to our work moving forward is how do we address this issue about the undervalue that is placed around sport and physical activity, and what do we need to do in the Black Country. And we feel actually we're quite uniquely placed because we're part of the Local Enterprise Partnership. We can begin to understand the arguments, but by God, it's a hard fight, even if we're part of an organisation who provides secretariat to the LEP. So here's Black Country's economic ambitions. So if you think of Judith's slides previously, around the government strategy, around that social development, around sports contribution to the economic development, those are the key things we're trying to hit. Has sport got a place? Has sport got a function? What are the key things we need to do better and differently? So, if you had a really brilliant sports offer, if we had 2, God bless them, or even 3 really successful football teams in the Black Country, would that get more people to move to the Black Country? If we add evidence that this is the place for people to live, because the way the houses in the Black Country are located encourage people to be physically active, will that lead to a change? Those are key challenges we've been asked by our Local Enterprise Partnership. We've been also asked, as a CSP even, is what's our contribution to the public sector reform agenda, with the real emphasis of driving down expenditure around those things that really cost government, health and social care being the key one, and further education being one, which I'll refer to a little bit later. So how do we begin to evidence our impact? Our compendium, our grade-to-grade evidence, suggests that if we got to national levels of physical activity, sport, we would save public health 25 million quid in the Black Country. And you can break that down through the obvious ones about CHD, diabetes, obesity, but also in terms of our data, is what could we do against certain cancers. And that begins a compelling argument at a time of devolution. But I think our biggest challenge as a sector, if we are going to move into those contemplators, pre-contemplators, how do we do the balancing act of that short-term results expectation that particularly in the past that Sport England sought to get the numbers right, with those long-term benefits that getting more people taking part actually brings to health and social care, to the transformation of our locality. And I think that's one of the big issues we've got as a sector moving forward, because getting people who don't regularly take part in sport takes time. You've got to build that trust and faith. You've got to tap into their motivation to participate. And then you begin to build after 9, 12 months, even 18 months. You begin to see how through that association you're seeing that sea change in sport. And whether we have, as a sector, have got time, given government pressure, to enable us to lead that change, to have that long-term benefit. So as a CSP, we really position ourselves just in time for around the government strategy launch of how do we place our work. More people taking part, driving our contribution to that economic prosperity, which I think is very much against that social development and economic prosperity argument that as outlined within the strategy, as well as that evidencing our local impact and added value. We are making that balancing act between that coordination and that local delivery. We want to make sure that has the biggest impact, but also has the biggest impact on the local enterprise partnerships priorities around people, place and business. And I just want to touch on a couple of those areas now. So as I highlighted, the employment skills agenda is everybody's agenda. If it's about devolution, it's about a local authority agenda for employment skills. It's about a local enterprise partnership agenda for employment and skills. And it's about, in the West Midlands, the West Midlands Combined Authority agenda for employment skills. And now it's about a Midlands engine that goes from Lincolnshire all the way over to Shropshire agenda about employment skills. What is it that we need to do? And we have two options for the sports sector. Either we can just let it happen and suffer the consequences, or we can really be part of that argument. And that's not least demonstrated through through area reviews, which just kicked off in the Black Country. Where through area reviews of further education college provision in areas, it's really saying is we want colleges to move to employment-led demand for skills within the provision of further education. So we can trial out new ideas, new opportunities, but we may be working with partly a closed door because the agenda is about high-value manufacturing, partly an open door, but we're working with far less colleges than ever before, or an opportunity to really influence. And there is a rather range of initiatives, like the Career and Enterprise Company, which is providing new range of careers and advice service to schools and colleges. And we really know that actually we need to make a far greater profile of the quality of the career opportunities within sport. And we know there is also huge sizable investment coming into the NEETs agenda, whether through Talent Match, Youth Employment Initiative, Big Lottery, European Social Fund, Building Better Opportunities. Loads and loads of stuff there. We haven't even talked about apprenticeships and traineeships. So if we are going to provide this strong evidence base, if we are going to provide this added value, if we are going to contribute to the area review, if we are going to build those employment skills needed for grassroots sports that Judith refers to, and we've really led to work on producing a sector skills action plan, which is for trying to understand the supply of skills into the sector and that demand. What does it tell us? Where are the skill shortages and skill gaps that we have to meet the government strategy, as highlighting the importance on behaviours and soft skills, as well as seeing that step change to argue our case why, in terms of future skill provision, we need a strong sport and physical activity sector. And our evidence suggests that there are a range of key skill gaps and shortages, but the scale and size of the work that needs to be done on soft skills probably beats, and it does, our evidence suggests, does beat high-value manufacturing. It beats our traditional manufacturing industries, does actually beat some of the digital technology industries that the Black Country is trying to change. So we need that huge, massive step change. The Acting Minister for Sport launched just our priorities and actions at his recent visit to the Black Country, which we really welcomed. And we were accelerating this work so it will be completed by the end of the month, ready for our area review in the Black Country. So we begin to see in the Black Country a whole range of technical and non-technical skill gaps. And if we are going to do that work to engage those communities, it's those skill gaps that we need to address. It's those qualifications. Many of our consultees on our sector skills plan have said, we get the bloody good coaches. We get an army of coaches with a level 2 qualification. We get an army of brilliant qualified fitness instructors who could tell you how to do every bit of equipment. But they'll do that, somebody will come in, they'll show you around the equipment, go back into their little room, put their feet on the table and read the paper. Nothing around those emotional intelligence, nothing around that empathetic skills that's really needed if we are going to get more people taking part. And there are people flocking out of their centre and not wanting to take part in sport. But for all of us, we have those responsibilities around those soft skills and those business skills to enable us to see that sea change that's needed. We begin to look at the place issues. We're working with Birmingham and our transport leads, and we part-financed an opportunity to develop an active travel strategy, which Judith referred to in terms of one of our slides. So how do we move away from just the traditional bricks and mortar and the synthetic pitches? And how do we begin to look at how we're influencing people's behaviours and their motivation to take part in sport, because it's easier to get round, it's easier to go out to a safe, secure jog, it's easier to get round as a family or on the way to work through active travel. And £5.2 million is not bad for about 10,000 investment we put in as a CSP. And now we've been asked to look at this notion of garden city, where you begin to look at how you bring health, low CO2 emissions into the heart of the planning and design of our future buildings. And that gives us a great opportunity. And I think it's a bit of testament to the impact we've had in trying to motivate and influence major planners and providers on what can be done. We haven't signed up to the CSP and Workplace Challenge stuff because our discussions with businesses is to say, if you are going to motivate businesses to get more people, more of their workforce active, yeah, we can play the absenteeism card, but it's quite well used. You need to look at a better economic metrics which tells you what's it going to do about our bottom line. So where's the savings going to be around insurance premiums? Where's the savings going to be in terms of productivity? And that's a key challenge for us in terms of trying to show that wider contribution to that economic development. That's the picture that looks at GBA. So we quite comparative picture of what we're trying to do to understand local delivery with this picture around what we're trying to do around this economic influence and demonstrate the impact that more people taking part in sport can have around our people, place and business priorities. But we really feel rooted in terms of our discussions and how we're going to influence that change. Here's some commentary that's been led through Jeff in Heathtown. Heathtown or Firetown. This is kind of getting to the last legs of community engagement by the stakeholders and leaders within the area to try and shift and change patterns of behaviour in the area. Jeff and myself and some of my team have taken 9 months to get some trust, faith in the community to try and do something different using sport around employment skills, improving the place, brought together public health, fire service, police, economic development, a social investor, etc., to try and see what we've got to change. And what we've learned, although we think insight is really invaluable, is if we are going to make a step change and get people taking part, not only do we need the trust and faith of those organisations that sport can make a sector, we need trust and faith of the communities and of the individuals that we're working with, that we can make and lead a solid change, that they don't seem done to. They don't see that we're just in our ivory tower, that we have that perception that we know what's happening. And that's a real golden challenge for us. So to finish off, the key messages for me today is government strategy provides one of the greatest opportunities we have to sector. A cross-government strategy for sport, physical activity is super. Give us the opportunity to demonstrate the impact we can have against those wider outcomes and that correlation between people taking part and their social and economic development lessons. We need to find new models, new systems, as Judy highlighted, of how we engage and how we work, both at local level and in terms of that coordination and planning. We need to get it right in terms of our evidence, of trying to show what impact sport can have, or what's the consequence of actions around economic and social development that can have on sports participation. I'm quite worried if we move from 6 colleges we have in the Black Country now to 1 or 2, how would that impact on that student type population taking part in sport? What impact is it going to have on our future skills? That's why we really focus on that sector skills plan. And how are we as a sector going to manage out these short-term expectations of getting the numbers with this long-term goal we have about engaging communities and the long-term impact sport and physical activity can have? And can't get away from it is you've got to try and look at ways in which you're building that trust, faith and confidence in the stakeholders you work with and the communities and individuals who we can and we know we can make such a change and motivate those to have a better life through taking part in sport. Thank you.